Okay. I will pop the agenda in the chat, and then I will also get it up on the screen here in a minute. Well, cooperate.
Let's get back from here in Grand Island this week too.
Okay, we will go ahead and get started. It's always funny how Zoom time always feels like a minute is like 10. So it feels like we're already 20 minutes late by 4 minutes late. But we're right on time. We'll get through this. I'm not sure we'll even need all of the 2 hours today. We're basically, I put the agenda there in the chat. We're going to go over some of the updates that just came out in the new RFA, and then we'll talk a little recap from the previous call about what we talked about last time and kind of what's happening. Go through some revised goals and structure, and then we're going to talk about key partners and then collaborator organizations, and then we'll have some time for discussion. And if people feel like they want to go into small groups for better discussion, we can do that, or we can just try to answer and field questions over this conversation. And I do want to say to keep in mind, like, we're still really figuring things out, and thank goodness the USDA has given us an extra 3 weeks to get this thing accomplished. So it's not due on November 22nd, which would be in 20 days. It's due on December 15th. So we do have a little bit of breathing room, and so we're going to be able to take a little bit deeper dive into some opportunities for discussion and figuring out structure within each collaborating state. So not on this call, but probably on the next call, we will do more state level breakout rooms so that people maybe give people a chance to kind of connect to help facilitate some of those relationships with the lead partners that we're identifying. And so that will come, not this meeting, but the next one. And then hopefully by the next meeting, we will have a much better handle on exactly what the budget is going to look like. And then we can, because that'll help inform the resource allocation conversations within each state. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I wanted to sort of frame what we're going to talk about today and what I know we still need to talk about that probably we won't get to today. But I think mostly today is kind of an update, and I forgot to press record. Did I? No, I'm recording, right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I will share this PowerPoint. Anna is also going to be joining us. Some of you have met her. She's a part of our team, and she is going to help me present when she gets on the call. And I see Mary Emery is also part of our, and Tisha is part of our grant writing team. They're also on the call, so you guys can jump in as you need to. I know Mary's kind of double meeting right now. She's doing a double meeting. I know Rachel's doing a double meeting, so people are trying to juggle a lot right now. We'll do the best we can here. And I'm trying to share my screen while I talk at the same time. It's not working. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we'll do this in presentation form, right? So here's our agenda. And please raise your hand. I can't really see people when I'm sharing my screen. So raise your hand if you have a question. It should bring you to the top of my screen so I can see that you actually need to hop in, or you can just unmute yourself and try to interrupt me. That would be fine too. Okay, so we're going to do some RFA updates first. Like I said, the extended deadline gives us a little more time. I mean, I realize also Thanksgiving is in there too, so it's not like it's a ton of time, but at least we don't have to try to cram an application in before Thanksgiving. So that's fantastic. Also, the on the RFA, they defined better what roles people are supposed to play. It was a little bit arbitrary in the beginning, and who was doing, like, sort of how you defined the partners, and what a partner was and what a collaborator was. So just to clear that up, maybe it's a little clearer. So we have the applicant partnership, so that'd be New Growth and University of Nebraska are the lead partners, but the lead applicant is the University of Nebraska. They are the ones who will be listed as, when we get funded, as the funded organization. And then we have key partners, which are, I guess that would be us. The New Growth organization would be the key partner on this. And then we have key partners from every state as well. So I'm going to get into that. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here already. The key partners are the people who are listed on the grant. They will have a fairly significant budget in the grant, and they may also have sub-awardees under them. We talked about this at the very beginning, sort of those bubbles where there's the lead applicant, there's the partner, and then there's the sub-awardee. Well, this is a key partner and then sub-awardee under key partner. And then we have collaborators, which aren't necessarily included in the budget, but maybe peripheral services that we're coordinating with. For example, SourceLink is an organization that is, I know it's in Nebraska and Kansas and Missouri, and they help entrepreneurs get access to resources. Well, they've decided in Nebraska, at least where the conversations happened, they don't need money, but they'd be happy to collaborate on the project and make sure that the resources for food businesses are part of their system as well. And so those collaborators, we have a lot of those. Even on this call, there may be some people who identify as collaborators, but not key partners or not sub-awards. And so we would be, if you are considered a key partner or a collaborator, we will be asking for letters of support for both of those designations. And then it also revised administrative updates to reflect roles and role types in that. And then the other thing I guess I'd say is that for the one good thing about the thing that they updated was that we don't have to include the key partner budget in the 15-page narrative. It can be a separate attachment. Before, it was actually, you were supposed to include the key partner narrative in with a 15-page narrative. They are already trying to explain all of the work and everything. So that's a good thing for us. We have a little more room to explain our application there. Okay, and then I don't know, Anna, if you joined the call, if you want to say anything, but
not on this slide, sorry.
Okay, perfect. Well, maybe I will, we can tag team back and forth. So if you want to grab this slide here, I'll do the next one.
Yeah. So I think coming out of the last meeting, we wanted to make sure that we took into account the feedback that we got and some of the direction that we got from you all about what it would mean to have a successful food business center. And so the key themes that I think we heard, and I'm sure that this is not an exhaustive list, is that folks were more interested in a distributed model rather than the hub and spoke that we had talked through a little bit last time. That people really valued preserving existing lines of communication and existing trust networks with the people that you serve and don't want to displace those through this. But in terms of what is new and what value can the food business centers add, there's interest in creating better mechanisms for coordination among those with shared interests. And so that may be along different lines, demographic, geographic, sector, role in the value chain, et cetera. And then one of the big things that we are proposing to do with this project is asset mapping to identify and categorize all the resources across the proposed service region. And a great point was raised, which is that it's one thing to identify the resources that exist and create awareness, but it needs to be accompanied by a discussion of what are the existing barriers to accessing those resources so we can help break down some of those barriers. And then continued the deliberate focus on how do we make sure that we are focusing on traditionally underserved groups. And not only that we are quote unquote serving underserved groups, but that they are in the governance structures, in the decision-making processes that we start to establish.
And also potentially lead partners as well,
Yes.
where it's appropriate. So this is our project objectives in here. This is basically our rough draft, our first attempt at a rough draft of a summary in the grant proposal. So please, this is a draft. We are calling it the MCP Regional Food Business Center because the other acronym MCP Rfbc is too long. But we want to utilize the resources. And as you can see, we have partners now in Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Iowa. And we will show you the list of partners we have confirmed and ones we're in conversation with. And we want to do a collective impact model through which we empower existing organizations across the covered states and tribes to achieve these three primary objectives. We want to develop this asset map, which we think will probably take the first year, the 6 to 9 months, hopefully. And Mary has been working on what that could look like from the University of Nebraska, building a dashboard that is both useful for the public and useful for our own organizations. If you go, during the pandemic, the University of Missouri developed the showmefood.org website, and it's pretty user-friendly. Also, I know Casey Healthy Kids has developed a neat local map of resources in the KC area, so that's also a good resource to sort of look at and grow from. So that's kind of what we're talking about there. And then increase collective outreach and extension activities, promote the utilization of those resources. And so that is, especially among traditionally underserved groups, that's kind of like you guys are already doing the work. And so how do we amplify it? How do we collectively show impact together? As a region, it's powerful when we can show that all these organizations are working together and we can achieve great things when we do that. And then facilitate business building subawards. So this is a big piece of the budget we're talking about potentially half of the $50 million budget going towards the business building award grants, which basically means that, we can distribute $25 million to our food and farm businesses. And like, hopefully that will be an acceptable thing from the USDA. So that is what we're working on the budget right now. We know that partners need support too. So we have to balance out, the need for supporting our partners with staffing and infrastructure and all of that, and the want to get all of our food and farm businesses the money that they need to survive and thrive. So that is currently our objectives. I'm just going to pause there for a minute. Are there any questions? We are going to get into partners and all of that, but just on this sort of high level talk so far, are there any questions? There's another ladybug in my face. Okay. Oh, Ken, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask about the mapping process. It seems like we might talk about an ongoing asset mapping process, not simply a map. And I think also I've done a lot of asset maps at a community level, or for a county level, or a neighborhood level, or something. And one dilemma is the most exciting part about the process is the people you engage by doing the asset mapping. And once you make a formal map, it often dies because it becomes owned by an institution, or it becomes seen as a static thing. And I'm wondering how we think about creating sub-regional asset maps, or county or community-based, or maybe a metropolitan region food shed map, and how that would coordinate with all the states we have in the region, and how we make that sort of perhaps an interactive website where people keep adding to, rather than something that is sort of seen as done.
Yeah, I don't see Mary on here anymore, so I would ask her to maybe address that question, because she's been working with.
I am here.
Oh, you are there. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Yeah,
Mary, do you want to say something about that? Yeah.
Yeah, and this would be an interactive map, and you can the map making process can allow you to pick a particular geography that you want to do the map for, and data can be entered at any time and added to the data. So one of the things we talked about is we already have a number of websites that collect data on services and farm products and stuff like that. And these data sets can be linked. So people that enter something in Market Maker, it would show up on the dashboard. If somebody added something to the dashboard that SourceLink would use, then it could be ported to SourceLink, and those would be, a lot of that would be run by algorithms, so it wouldn't require a lot of everyday taking care of it. So yeah, we are very concerned that we'd end up with a static website that nobody updates and it loses its ability to make a difference. And we also really understand the importance of being able to focus in on a specific geography.
And Mary, if I can follow up too, you may not have had time to think about this just yet, but I'm wondering if you've thought about the process of making the map. Will this involve local meetings across these 6 states, or how will people engage? How will community people engage, and especially BIPOC people engage in actually creating the maps?
Well, the maps are created when we have a geo coordinate for the data. So
I think your question is, like how's the data getting collected? Where's it coming from, maybe? And that's actually one of the responsibility of the key partners, is to help collect that data from a community level, so that we are actually capturing not just the high level stuff that like the people that traditionally answer a survey. It's like, okay, so we know about these things because we know the stories behind them and have experience with them, and they can actually be captured within the asset mapping. Does that answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, that's much more the question I was posing. You know, my experience has been, you put up a piece of butcher paper on the wall and you have people put sticky notes or, draw in markers or something, the things they consider assets. And I've seen that be a tremendously empowering, exciting process in 20 minutes, where a lot of assets get identified and people really find new ways to work together. But it also requires people being together in a meeting. In some community meetings, we had 5 different groups doing maps of the same region and put those together in a big map. And it's worth thinking through how those gets constructed. And I think that there's a real chance for getting people engaged and really thrilled about the work if we do that engagement right on the front end.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
And that's also part of the structure that we're trying to. How do we make a decentralized structure? Well, the way we do that is put the power of actually getting the data into the hands. Like, it's the job of the collaborative to get that information, not just the University of Nebraska or not just, New Growth. It's everybody's responsibility. Which I can, if that is the next slide. Oh, well, so we'll talk about that a little bit more too when we get into the partnership responsibilities.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Anna, do you want to take this revised structure?
Yeah, so we had talked a little bit last time about what we were calling a hub and spoke model, but I think this captures the core components of what we're now proposing to build as we start to fill in some of the blanks. And so in my mind, there's 6 of them. The first is the diverse key partnerships themselves, which fit with ensuring equity and inclusion of serving diverse constituencies across the proposed region. And so some of those are small and some of them are University of Nebraska Lincoln and are big, and other universities. And so I think that there's a nice balance there. In the next slide, we'll talk about who some of those potential partners are. The second component is the lead applicant. USDA does require that there be a lead applicant. And so UNL is proposing that they will administer a lot of the backbone administrative portion, and including managing the MOUs with the other key partners and managing the auditing and whatnot with USDA. The third, I think we went forward one slide, Katie, if we can go back.
Oh, sorry about that. Did I go back?
I feel like I have it memorized, but I don't.
I know, right? Okay, this should be the right one, right?
That's right. The third component is the broad network of collaborators. I'm very appreciative that USDA updated the definition of roles in the latest RFA because it is very useful to identify some people as collaborators who will participate in some cases as subawardees, in some cases just to tap into the network of other resources and organizations across this web that we are building. The fourth is the asset map that we keep talking about. The fifth is the business builder subaward programs, which will be grant opportunities that we still need to frankly figure out what these look like and how they will be dispersed and the decision-making process behind those. And our intent is that the bulk of the funds will actually go through this subaward program because we want to make sure that we are distributing funds as close to the ground as possible and not kind of concentrating them in the broader coordination mechanisms. And then the last one is a little bit subject to change at this point, but what I'm calling thematic communications channels, which is just how do we organize, whether it's a working group or whatever it may be, how do we organize people who have common goals and interests within this network to foster dialogue in a really intentional way. So this is where I expect there may be more questions. Katie, what do you have to add?
Just in terms of like the thematic communications channel, that's sort of like would be the job of the co-directors. If right now we're proposing that there's a director at a co-director at New Growth and a co-director at UNL, and that they would help facilitate these working groups that were themed around certain areas in our food system. Not, there may be a small farming working group, there may be a value-added food processing, working group working with those types of food businesses. Or it may be also like evaluation working group that helps identify data that needs to be collected for our evaluation process. That's kind of like our communication channels. And Patty, you have a question?
Just to comment on that, which is a great idea, communications channels that hopefully, I think it came across that cross-pollination and sharing between those groups to avoid silos. We don't want people kind of segregated in places, and there's things that people are going to want to share and communicate around actual business building across those channels. So just wanted to put that on the map too, if it's not already there.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is where we've developed a list of key partner expectations, and I will say, you'll see a list in just a second, but we're talking about 1 to 3 key partners per state. And then, if there are other organizations within that state that want to be part of the governing structure, part of like the budget, we'll need to facilitate conversations between key partners and those organizations within that state. But right now, that key partner's responsibilities, expectations would be to really be heavily involved in the asset mapping process. Engaging the other organizations in their state that they have relationships with, and finding other ones if they don't have relationships with them, especially ones that are underserved or that are not typically in our networks, that we bring them into the network and try to help them see that there's a broader availability of work that we can do together. Participating in the governing council and attending planning meetings. So we expect that every key partner will have at least one person on the governing council. I also see that there will be collaborative partners on the governing council, as well as even individual farmer food business people that can help guide some of the decision making around this food business center, so that it's not just the people that have the funds or the people in power that are making those decisions at the community built governing council, but the key partners would have a role in that. Administering subawards, actually probably the better terminology is facilitating subawards. The actual subawards administering subawards, I was thinking business building. So many lingos going on, but okay, so administering subawards is actually, if a key partner wants to build part of their budget to have subawards, then as a partner, you would be responsible for all of the paperwork associated with having that subaward under your partner organization. And then going to facilitating business building grants, is the UNL, University of Nebraska, will be the one to actually do all the paperwork and the reimbursements or the payments. I'm not even sure if we have to do reimbursements through this grant, but the payments to the grantees for the $100 business building grants. But the partner is really responsible for trying to identify, provide TA, help them fill out the paperwork involved, and doing follow-up and making sure that that's a successful business building grantee. That is the role of the key partner. And if they need to bring on, other collaborators to accomplish that, that is up to them. And then communications and outreach is also another piece that the key partners are responsible for. We have to have unified messaging. We have to have conversations and facilitated communication amongst partners. And so every partner will have a piece of that communication and outreach, telling the story of the Regional Food Business Center, adding information to their websites, putting out press releases, things like that. And then I'm going to go to the key partner identified, and then we'll open for questions here. And I can go ahead and do this one. So I can't even see my slide. My thing's in the way. Okay, there we go. So these are the ones in blue, I think, are confirmed, and the ones in black we're actually just still in conversation with, trying to figure out whether it's a good fit and who within that organization is the good fit. Especially with universities, it can be challenging to find out which part of the university is responsible, could take responsibility for this. But you can see we do have 3 organizations. Well, 4 organizations potentially identified in Kansas, so we're still trying to sort of narrow that down a little bit. But Oklahoma, there's a couple, a nonprofit university, and the idea of having multiple key partners is that if there's a university involved, especially, we want to have a nonprofit as a key partner as well, so that there's a balance of work there, because we know that the workflow for a university is different than a nonprofit. And we have also the Native American Coalition, which spans multiple states. And working with, in Nebraska, we've got a nonprofit, the Center for Rural Affairs, and of course the University of Nebraska. And then we've got Comunidad Maya in Nebraska there, serving the Mayan community across multiple states, actually. And then in Iowa State is our only partner there identified right now. Arkansas, we have the Food Conservancy, which is a food hub in Springdale, Arkansas. And Common Ground, we already talked about them, or we talked about Kansas. And then in Missouri, we have University of Missouri and New Growth currently as well. University of Missouri, we're still talking to them. So I guess was that our last slide? No, it's not the last slide. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for a minute for partner questions, and then we'll go on to collaborator conversations. There are any. Ken.
Yeah, this is actually more a work plan question than a partner question. So I may be out of turn here, but I was looking, I love the language of business builder subawards. And what I'm less clear about is who in this network is charged with really developing a vision for how we form business networks, and how do we just establish priorities for, do we want to invest in certain businesses because they're going to be more effective at building a network that lasts in the region or in part of the region. And I'm not sure I see the kind of visioning component clearly in the work plan right now, and wondering about what you're thinking about that at this stage.
Yeah, so the visioning component, I mean, it's going to be present within the written narrative. And one of the things that we envision, New Growth has been doing some really great work, and I'm sure there's others, around building relationships from the small business owner to the lender. And so there's a lot of high power banks, right, that have a lot of money. And so what's the bridge to actually having a relationship with them? And so there's a lot of community organizations that can help build financial institution relationships. So that's just one example of how we strengthen the network for food and farm, bridging that relationship between even nonprofits and lenders is not always there within the business building kind of idea. And I don't know, Mary or Anna, if you want to speak to some of the other visioning that we have discussed. There's a component in there, but it have been sort of heavily focused on how we sort of build the center. And there's talk of sustainability, but I don't know about more pieces of the vision that present.
And if I can just clarify, I think I'm thinking more about what in this business center process will be the repository of that vision, so that is there an ongoing group that's really meeting, every 3 months to say, how do we build networks better? Is there a sort of, once we set a vision, how do we really find out if we're, that we're implementing a network vision and a web vision rather than simply getting a lot of businesses moving separate directions? And do we want to prioritize loans to or grants to businesses that will network with each other? And so we're really consciously forming networks of commerce that also integrate with our nonprofit and our community networks, so that we're not thinking strictly about just business by business.
I think so. I can speak a little bit to pieces of that, although I think that the answer is kind of distributed throughout the way that we're thinking about this. But two things. One is our core intent is to figure out how do we build the connections to have conversation that help people move collectively. And so some of that will be somewhat organic, and some of it will take place through the coordination mechanisms that we are setting up, including the governance council and the thematic communications channels, whatever those look like. But maybe it is a good point that through the initial development of the asset map, that the first phase of that conversation is what is the vision for that part of it and for the broader rural food business center. The other thing is that we have talked about throughout the whole thing is we want to make sure that when the business builder sub-awards are being distributed, they're being distributed as close to those communities as possible. So we don't want UNL as the lead applicant making those decisions. We don't want the key partners even as the partner applicants making those decisions, but we want to move them as close to the ground as possible so that people identify needs and are pushing them out where it's needed. I'm not sure if that kind of answers that point.
It's very helpful, Anna. Yeah, I think what I would just say is you may want to allocate budget for that process so that you have, if and make it clear in the proposal where it lies. If it's in the governance council, that's pretty clear, but they may need some staffing to do that. They may need some time to be freed up for people to convene in meetings to sort of monitor the vision and make sure they're getting, that investment's going the direction they want it to do, or if something goes the wrong direction, there's a way of correcting. So that you might want to think about staffing and budget for that process and making sure that it's clear in the work plan.
Thanks for that.
Sorry, there's a question in the chat. Jenna, do you want to just speak your question, or might be easier?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I'm coming in. I think I've missed the first call, but thanks to Kansas City for kind of looping us in. We are a very, very beginning, recently grant funded food hub entity in Oklahoma City, and very interested in learning everything we can. And I was just wondering kind of who that very grassroots ground level player is that is like kind of the recipient of this incubation or business support services. Are those individual farmers, or are they food hub organizations, or if someone could kind of clarify that maybe a little bit for me.
There, in the RFA, it's pretty vague. It actually says, food and farm businesses. So it is all of those things. Food hubs, farmers, even nonprofits working in the ag sector, I believe, would be eligible for business building sub-awards grants, especially food hubs. And yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to put my head around it a little bit, like as a food,
Sure.
like would I be like more thinking I'm a recipient of incubation, which we definitely need, or more like will be someone who's partnering to incubate others, which I don't know if we have the capacity for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. And we can have a conversation, you and I together, to sort of identify where you guys might fit. I know, the Kansas City Food Hub is a little bit farther along, maybe. When did you guys get started? What year did you incorporate? Or then, oh, you're muted if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry about that. We haven't even incorporated yet. We just got funding
Okay.
to incorporate this year.
Yeah, so probably where an organization like yours would fit would be within, you would even be probably a good candidate for technical assistance from one of our lead partners or one of the supporting organizations to help with that business planning. And then, even being able to apply for that $100,000 business building grant sounds like maybe a best sort of fit for an organization like yours. Because we look, and maybe we'll go to the collaborator slide, and then that may answer some of your questions about, because the key partners are probably a little bit larger organizations with the capacity to do all these things that we talked about. And then the collaborators will be folks that are not necessarily key partners, but could still be part of the budget. David, do you have a question?
Yes, one of the things we keep talking about, the $100,000 grants. Does it have to be $100,000? Can there be a couple of $50,000 grants?
Oh, sure.
The
Yeah, they
reason
could
I
be-
ask that is that I feel like the partner organizations are what you're talking around seems to be the idea we're going to be building business plans to help ensure that these businesses have a sound way to utilize the funds to grow their business, to create these networks. That's a business plan. And
Yeah, it
so
could look like that.
they may not need $100,000 to do it. Or, I mean, it's just,
Absolutely.
I'm just trying to clarify that.
It's up to $100,000 for 2 years.
Okay.
But, there is no language in the USDA that says there has to be a minimum. The governance structure, the governance council that if we get funded, that will be a part of this project could decide there's a minimum, but, that will be up to the people who are the decision makers on that council.
And I think we're anticipating that some of them may be quite small, because for instance, some programs and some services are fee-for-use services and they want to reach more users, but they need to at least cover their costs. And so in some cases, it may just be subsidizing people accessing their programs, and those would be quite small. And then in some cases, it may be a more robust sort of business plan, like you said.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the last slide here. Anna, do you want to cover collaborators?
Yes, I'm really excited about the organizations that we've already assembled now and the opportunity to bring more people together. Kudos to Katie and Mary for building this network and starting to build it out. But we expect that maybe most of the people plugged into the hub will choose to participate as collaborators, which are organizations that are not partners, but will be part of the network that we are building and may participate in different ways. In our case, we are saying that any eligible organization that wants to be part of the network is welcome to do so, which is any plugged in at any point in a food system serving producers, food or food businesses. And so some people may opt to just participate in the network that we are building, and some may apply for some of these business builder subawards, and others may just want their organization included in kind of the directory of assets that we're going to be categorizing so that people are aware of and can more effectively find the resources that they offer. One of the updates to the RFA is that USDA recognizes that there will be a lot of these collaborators, and they suggest that those who are interested at this point and know they are interested in being a collaborator in the food business centers Also include a letter of support acknowledging your organization's commitment and talking about the specific ways that you anticipate you may plug in. If you are interested in doing that, A, we're incredibly appreciative and excited about your participation, and B, Katie and Mary and I can help plug you into the letters and get you some templates to submit some letters of support.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do in the next meeting is make sure that all of our lead partners that we've confirmed, we would like to have all of our lead partners confirmed by next week. We did say Friday in the original timeline, but now that we have a little bit of breathing room, I haven't asked Anna or Mary about this or Tisha, but I think we're good with, solidifying those lead partners by the end of next week. And then what I would like to do is facilitate conversations among states with all of the organizations interested, so that if you want to be a subaward in a key partner's budget, that we are able to facilitate the ability to do that. It's looking like we had, let's see, how many partners did I have on that list? 14. If that is the way it plays out, we would try to distribute around 14 to 20 million to the key partners over the 5 years. And so if you distribute $1 million over 5 years, it doesn't end up being that big of a budget. But so we have to see, like, if there's a lot of subawards for one key partner, maybe we can put a little more resources to that direction. And again, I'm actually speaking a little out of turn here. We haven't had the specific, like, down to the key partner subaward conversation yet as the grant team, but these are kind of some of the things we've been talking about in terms of budget. And so I would like to, for the next call, maybe they'll just be state specific calls, or we could all join together to have an update and then go into breakout rooms to help facilitate those conversations. Oops, yeah, so stop sharing here. You can see people in the chat. Right, so that's where we're at. We still have far to go. We have started the draft narrative. One of the things we'll be asking for soon too is like information about your community that we might not be able to find in just the data, and trying to sort of piece that all together. You can imagine 6 states. It's a lot of information, so we have to sort of decide what kind of information we're going to go after here. Take a pause. Do we have any questions? Also, are there really big concerns? Did you have any? Were there any red flags for you? Is there something you got excited about? Are we missing the big piece that you didn't see? Are there key partners on the call that want to say anything about your decision to want to lead that? Is everybody taking a nap for lunch? Okay. The other question I would ask maybe is, anybody needing to have contact information for anybody in their state? If they do, they can email me directly, and I can connect you with those partners, and even get on a call with you and that partner, and we can have a conversation together on a smaller scale. We really don't want to leave anybody behind, is what I'm trying to get at. If you were hoping to get a resource out of this in the grant application phase, like, talk to me. We'll figure it out. If you want to wait until we get funded, if we get funded, which I hope we are, then that's okay too. There'll be opportunities for that. And also, if there's people that you haven't seen on the email list, I've been pretty transparent about who's actually been invited to these meetings. So if you see people that should be on there that aren't, please let me know. Because I still would like to reach out to more folks in Arkansas and potentially even Iowa if there's another partner in Iowa that would want to come to the table. And we do know that Practical Farmers of Iowa is on the Michigan State application. So we figured, well, the USDA can sort it out. So. Anna or Mary, do you have anything else you want to say? I don't want to drag this out too long.
That's all I have, except for to say that we're really appreciative of all the engagement and feedback in this process. If things come to mind that you didn't think of on the spot as you were looking at our slides, please let us know. I feel like we have a little bit of breathing room since they extended the deadline, so we have an opportunity to make sure that this is a really robust application that fits the vision of this group. So again, just really appreciative.
Right. Well, if you have brilliant ideas that come to you or ways to frame things, email us, Anna, Mary, and I. We're going to be writing this thing over the next couple of weeks, and we certainly don't know it all. And we appreciate the comments. Ken, I know you're up there in Minnesota and just trying to offer your vast wealth of knowledge to the group, and I appreciate that. So. All right, well, I think I'm going to go join the office hours then for USDA Rural Regional Food Business Center. We will talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
Thanks.